July 18th, 1973. 2 days before Bruce Lee dies. A private gym in Hong Kong. Just two men, Bruce Lee and Dan Inosanto. They're sparring, like they've done 1,000 times. But something is different. Dan sees it, and what he sees will haunt him for the rest of his life. Let me take you back, because this story doesn't start in that gym. It starts years earlier, when two warriors became brothers. 1964, Los Angeles. Bruce Lee is teaching a martial arts demonstration, showing off his revolutionary style, Jeet Kune Do. In the crowd sits Dan Inosanto, a martial artist, Filipino fighting expert, already skilled, already disciplined. He watches Bruce move, like water made flesh, impossibly fast, impossibly precise. After the demonstration, Dan approaches. "Can I train with you?" Bruce looks him up and down. "What can you teach me?" Most people ask what Bruce can teach them. Dan asks what he can offer. Bruce smiles. "Come tomorrow, 6 a.m. That's how it begins. A friendship, a brotherhood, built on sweat and respect. For 9 years they train together, almost daily. Bruce teaches Dan his philosophy. Dan teaches Bruce Filipino stick fighting. They push each other, challenge each other, trust each other. But more than that, Dan becomes one of the few people who sees the real Bruce, not the movie star, not the legend, the man who pushes too hard, the man who can't stop, the man who's slowly breaking. 1969, Bruce's garage. They're training, sparring, hard. Bruce throws a kick. His back spasms. He winces, tries to hide it. Dan sees. "You okay?" "Fine, keep going." They continue, but Dan notices. Bruce is compensating, favoring his right side, moving differently. After training, Dan asks again, "You're back. What's wrong?" Bruce waves it off. "Old injury. Nothing serious." Dan doesn't buy it. He's seen injuries. This is different. This is chronic. "Have you seen a doctor?" "Don't need a doctor. I know my body. That's what concerns me." Bruce stops, looks at Dan, not angry, defensive. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you push yourself harder than anyone I know, and sometimes the body needs more than discipline." Bruce turns away, starts hitting the heavy bag, conversation over. But it is serious. Dan can see it in Bruce's eyes, the pain, the frustration, the fear. Because here's what most people don't know. Bruce Lee is terrified of weakness, not in others, in himself. Every pain is a threat. Every limitation is an enemy. Every moment of rest is a moment someone else is getting stronger. Dan understands this. He's a warrior too. But he also understands something Bruce doesn't, that the body isn't the enemy. It's your partner, and partners need care. Over the next year, Dan watches the back injury worsen. Some days Bruce can barely bend. Other days he moves like nothing's wrong. The difference? Pills. Dan catches Bruce taking them one day. "What are those?" "Just pain medication." "How many are you taking?" "As many as I need." Dan feels a chill. "Bruce, those things are serious. You can't just..." "I can't train without them." "So yes, I can." There's no arguing with Bruce when he gets like this. Stubborn, immovable, a wall. So Dan does the only thing he can. He trains with Bruce, watches him, adjusts their sessions when Bruce is hurting, covers for him when needed, because that's what brothers do. 1970. The back injury worsens. Bruce can barely train some days, but he never cancels on Dan, never admits weakness. One morning, Dan arrives at Bruce's house. Linda meets him at the door. "He's not doing well today." "What's wrong?" "His back. He couldn't get out of bed this morning." Dan goes to the bedroom. Bruce is lying flat, staring at the ceiling. "Came to cancel?" Dan asks. "Never." "Bruce, you can't train like this." "Watch me." It takes Bruce 20 minutes to get dressed. Every movement is agony, but he does it. They go to the garage. "We're taking it easy today," Dan says. "We're training normally." Dan knows that tone. There's no point arguing. So they train, slowly, carefully, Dan watching every movement. Bruce is in constant pain, But he doesn't stop, never stops. Instead, he adapts, changes his technique, develops new ways to move, turns limitation into innovation. This is what amazes Dan, what breaks his heart. Bruce is reinventing martial arts, creating new techniques, new philosophies, all to work around a body that's breaking down. "What are you doing?" Dan asks, watching a new movement. "If I can't kick high, I'll kick more efficiently. Lower, faster, angles they won't expect." Dan watches in awe. This is what makes Bruce special, not his speed, not his strength, his refusal to accept limits. But Dan also sees the cost, the painkillers Bruce takes, the way he limps when nobody's watching, the exhaustion in his eyes. After training, they sit. Bruce is sweating, pale, shaking slightly. "Bruce, you need to rest." "I'll rest when I'm dead." Dan laughs, nervous, because part of him wonders if Bruce is serious. Bruce doesn't laugh. That night, Dan calls Linda. "How is he? Really?" Linda sighs. "He's not sleeping. The pain keeps him up. He takes pills to sleep, pills to wake up, pills to train. I've tried talking to him. And he says he'll rest after he proves himself to Hollywood, after he breaks through. After. Always after." Dan knows that word. After. The most dangerous word in Bruce Lee's vocabulary. 1971. Something shifts. Bruce gets more roles, more recognition, but also more pressure. His training with Dan becomes irregular. Bruce is busy, filming, promoting, building his legend. When they do train, Bruce is different, distant, distracted. "You okay?" Dan asks after a session. "Just thinking about the future." "What about it?" "Hollywood still doesn't see me as a leading man. They see me as a sidekick, a kung fu guy. I need to change that." "You're already changing it." "Not fast enough." Dan sees it then. The desperation, the fear that time is running out. But time for what? Bruce is only 31, at the peak of his powers. Why the rush? Dan doesn't ask, but he wonders. 1972, Hong Kong. Bruce has moved back, becoming a superstar. Films breaking records, fame exploding. Dan visits. They train at Bruce's home gym. Bruce is different, thinner, more intense, almost manic. The moment Dan walks in, he feels it. Something's wrong. Bruce greets him with that famous smile, but the smile doesn't reach his eyes. The eyes are hollow, tired, haunted. "I'm doing it, Dan. I'm showing Hollywood they were wrong." "You look tired, brother." "I'm fine. Never felt better." That phrase, never felt better. Bruce says it constantly now, like a mantra, like he's trying to convince himself. They spar. Bruce is still fast, still sharp. But Dan notices something. Bruce is breathing heavier, sweating more, taking longer to recover between rounds. And there's something else, something in Bruce's movements, a desperation, like he's trying to prove something, not to Dan, to himself. After the session, they talk. Bruce tells Dan about his films, about Hollywood finally taking notice, about Enter the Dragon, his big break. "This is it, Dan. This is what everything has been building toward." Dan listens, hears the excitement, but also hears something else, exhaustion. "When's the last time you had a full day off?" Bruce laughs. "What for?" "For rest, for recovery, for life." Bruce shakes his head. "I can rest when I'm successful. Right now, every day matters, every opportunity." "You're already successful." "Not successful enough. Not yet." Dan doesn't push. He knows Bruce, knows that pushing makes him defensive, makes him train harder just to prove a point. So Dan just trains with him, supports him, and worries. Because the friend he sees in front of him, the brother he's known for 8 years, is disappearing, being consumed by his own ambition, his own drive, his own inability to stop. 1973, May. Dan gets a phone call. Bruce collapsed, rushed to the hospital, brain swelling. Dan flies to Hong Kong immediately. At the hospital, Bruce is awake, joking with nurses, acting like nothing happened. They're making a big deal out of nothing. You had a seizure, Bruce. Just overheated. I'm fine. There it is again. I'm fine. Dan looks at Linda, Bruce's wife. She's scared, terrified. The doctors are clear. Bruce needs to rest, completely, or next time could be fatal. Bruce promises, agrees, tells everyone he's taking a break. Dan believes him, wants to believe him. But 2 weeks later, Bruce calls. Come to Hong Kong. I want to train. The doctor said, I know what they said. I've been resting. Now I need to get back in shape. Trust me. Dan hesitates, then agrees. Because maybe training with a friend is safer than training alone. Maybe Dan can keep an eye on him. Make sure he doesn't push too hard. July 18th, 1973. Dan arrives in Hong Kong. Bruce picks him up from the airport. Looks good, energetic, excited. Enter the Dragon is about to release. This is it, Dan. This is everything. How are you feeling, really? Honestly, best I've felt in months. The rest helped. Dan wants to believe him. They go to Bruce's private gym, a small space. Just the two of them, like old times. They warm up, stretch, talk about technique, philosophy, life. Then they start sparring. Light at first, just flowing, reading each other's movements. The dance they've done 1,000 times. Bruce is good, still fast, still precise. But Dan sees it. Something's wrong. Bruce's punches are off. Not by much. Most people wouldn't notice. But Dan has trained with Bruce for 9 years. He knows every movement, every rhythm, every tell. And this isn't right. Bruce's timing is off by fractions of a second. His distance judgment is slightly wrong. His balance is imperceptibly shifted. You okay? Dan asks. Yeah, why? Dan doesn't know how to explain. It's not one thing. It's everything. A feeling. Nothing. Keep going. They continue. Bruce throws a combination. Punch, kick, punch. The kick is slow. Just slightly. Just enough. Dan catches it. Sweeps Bruce's standing leg. Bruce goes down. Hard. Dan immediately helps him up. Sorry, Don't apologize, Bruce cuts him off. That was good. I got sloppy. But Bruce isn't sloppy. Never. They reset. Spar again. This time Dan watches more carefully. Studies Bruce's eyes, his breathing, his movements. And he sees it. Bruce's eyes. They're not focused. Not sharp like they should be. They're slightly glazed. Like he's seeing but not processing fast enough. His breathing is labored. Too heavy for this level of exertion. His movements are compensating. For what? Dan doesn't know. But Bruce is fighting his own body. They finish the round. Bruce sits down. Wipes sweat from his face. Good session. Bruce. Yeah. Dan almost says it. Almost tells him. Something's wrong. You're not yourself. You need to see a doctor. But Bruce is smiling. Happy. The happiest Dan has seen him in months. I needed this, Bruce says. Needed to feel like myself again. The hospital, the rest, it was making me soft. But this reminds me who I am. Dan swallows his concern. Yeah, good session. They train for another hour. Bruce insists. One more round. Another drill. Just a few more minutes. Dan agrees. Each time. Because how do you tell a warrior to stop fighting? Finally, they finish. Bruce is exhausted. More than he should be. They sit. Drink water. Talk. Dan, I need to tell you something. What? Bruce hesitates. This is rare. Bruce Lee doesn't hesitate. I've been having headaches, bad ones. Have you told your doctor? Yeah, they say it's stress, dehydration. Nothing serious. And you believe them? Bruce looks at Dan, really looks at him. For a moment, the mask drops. The legend disappears. And Dan sees his friend, scared, exhausted, human. I don't know what I believe anymore. My body feels like it's betraying me. Everything hurts. I'm tired all the time. But I can't stop now. I'm so close. Close to what? Everything. Proving I belong. Showing the world. Making it all mean something. Dan reaches over, puts his hand on Bruce's shoulder. You've already done that. You've already proven everything. Bruce shakes his head. Not yet. Enter the Dragon releases next month. If that succeeds, if Hollywood finally accepts me, then I can rest. Then it will all have been worth it. And if you don't make it to next month? The question hangs in the air. Bruce stands. I'll make it. Lee men are survivors. 2 days later, Bruce Lee is dead. Dan gets the call from Linda. He can't breathe, can't think. He flies to Hong Kong, attends the funeral, carries the casket, and the whole time he keeps seeing it. That sparring session. Bruce's eyes, unfocused, glazed, wrong. He saw it. He knew something was wrong, and he said nothing. At the funeral, people asked Dan, "How was Bruce? Did he seem okay?" Dan tells them what they want to hear. He seemed great, happy, strong. But at night alone, the truth haunts him. Bruce wasn't great. He was dying. Right there in that gym, his body was shutting down. And Dan saw it. The autopsy reveals what Dan suspected. Bruce's organs were failing. His brain was swelling. His body was destroying itself from years of abuse. The headaches Bruce mentioned? Not stress, not dehydration. His brain crying for help. Dan replays that conversation 1,000 times. I've been having headaches. Have you told your doctor? They say it's nothing serious. Dan should have pushed, should have insisted, should have dragged Bruce to the hospital himself. But he didn't, because Bruce said he was fine, and Dan wanted to believe him. Years later, in an interview, Dan is asked about Bruce, about that final training session. He pauses, chooses his words carefully. I saw something in Bruce that day, something I'd never seen before. Fear, not of an opponent, not of failure. Fear of his own body. Fear that it was giving up on him. Why didn't you say anything? Because Bruce Lee didn't accept help. He didn't accept limitations. And I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe he really would rest after the movie. Dan's voice breaks. I was his training partner, his brother. I knew him better than almost anyone. And I saw the signs. I saw him dying. And I did nothing. Do you think you could have saved him? Dan looks directly at the camera. I think if I had grabbed him that day, if I had looked him in the eyes and said, Bruce, you're dying. I can see it. You need help now. Maybe he would have listened, because it wouldn't have come from a doctor. It would have come from another warrior. But you didn't. No, I didn't. And I've lived with that every day since. What Dan saw that day wasn't just Bruce Lee struggling. It was Bruce Lee's body giving its final warning. The last chance to stop. The last chance to rest. The last chance to live. And Bruce ignored it. 2 days later, his body gave up. Dan Inosanto is 87 years old now. Still teaching, still training, still carrying Bruce's legacy. But he also carries the weight of what he saw and what he didn't say. In his school, there's a photo, Bruce and Dan, sparring, smiling, July 18th, 1973, the last time they trained together. Students ask about it. What was Bruce like? Dan tells them. He was the greatest martial artist I ever knew. Fast, strong, brilliant. But more than that, he was human. He hurt. He struggled. He pushed too hard. And in the end, that's what killed him. Not a curse? No, not a curse. A choice. Every time he pushed past pain. Every time he took pills instead of rest. Every time someone asked if he was okay and he said, I'm fine. Dan pauses. If you learn nothing else from Bruce Lee, learn this. Listen to your body. It's not weakness to rest. Bruce was the strongest man I knew, and his body broke because he wouldn't listen. That last training session, July 18th, after they talked. Dan made a decision. He would come back the next week, make Bruce see a real doctor, force him if necessary. But he waited, gave Bruce space. On July 20th, Bruce was dead. The last thing Bruce said to Dan, thanks for coming, brother. I needed this. Needed to remember what it feels like to be strong. Dan hugged him. You're always strong, Bruce. That's not what I'm worried about. What are you worried about? Dan should have said it then. Instead, nothing. Just take care of yourself. Bruce smiled. Always do. They never saw each other again. Dan carries Bruce's last movements, last words, last breath, every day. He sees Bruce in his students, the ones who push too hard, who won't rest, who say I'm fine when they're not. And he stops them, makes them rest, because he couldn't save Bruce. But maybe he can save someone else. That's Bruce Lee's real legacy, not the films, not the philosophy, not the perfect kicks. The lesson his death teaches. The strongest warriors aren't the ones who never break. They're the ones who know when to stop before they do. Bruce never learned that. He broke. Dan saw it happening, said nothing, and has to live with that. Every single day. On July 18, 1973, Dan Inosanto saw something nobody else did. He saw Bruce Lee dying, in those unfocused eyes, in that labored breathing, in that body fighting itself. He saw it, he knew it, and he'll never forgive himself for staying silent. Bruce Lee died surrounded by people who loved him, who saw him suffering, who said nothing. Because how do you tell a dragon to stop flying? You can't. But you can try. Dan didn't try hard enough. That's what he saw on July 18, 1973. Not just Bruce Lee dying, but his own failure to stop it. And that's what haunts him most.